Hey everybody, JJ here down in the dungeon again, just messing around with drums, and it occurred to me that through all of these Babble videos, I've done a video about my setup. I've done a video about my cymbals in particular, some of my old cymbals, some other things, and I've done a video in general about Tama and why they're my particular favorite brand of drums and some of that stuff. But it occurs to me that I've never actually talked about this kit, which I have been using now in pretty close to 1,000 videos or something like that. A lot of videos, and I get the occasional question about the drums and the odd remark from people that know what they are and stuff like that. But I thought I would go through and just talk a little bit about why this drum set has become the chosen one out of some of the other kits I have, and what I like about this kit, and the story about kind of how I came to get all this stuff. But so I don't think it's any surprise from the posters on the wall that growing up, Metallica was a very big influence musically for me, and Lars ended up becoming my favorite drummer, and watching him play, and it was such a great time in music, and when I was getting into drums, and it kind of is before we get into where it's nothing against modern kind of performances and stuff, but these days it seems to be more kind of about like what's going on in the screen, and kind of the other things that are less about the musicians and showcasing them, and more about kind of like this bigger thing going on. Like shows that happen at the Sphere in Las Vegas are a great example of that, where like the band almost doesn't even need to be there, kind of thing, and the show can just go on without the band even performing. But I digress. But seeing performers in the 90s, when it was more just about them, you got like some really great like footage and some great inspiration as a young musician, and seeing Lars, and at that time Metallica was biggest band on the planet, and arguably still are, but he was everywhere, and also everywhere at that time was his famous white drum set. And there's a lot of other people I've talked to through the years, and friends of mine, and we all like looked at that drum set and dreamt of having that, and a few of us have realized that and actually have the kit at home. But I got pretty close, but I put my own kind of little spin on it. But getting back to that, always looking at the drums and the power toms and the sizes and the stands and the cymbals, and looking at that was kind of like the high watermark for me. And I figured very early on, if I could have something akin to that, something like that, it would be like a basically dream come true, more or less. And it really is. It's it's not a cliche to kind of say that getting things, regardless of what you think quality or price or whatever that thing reflects, it's like if you're able to get these things, your hands on these things that as a kid you could only kind of dream of or hope for, then in a small way it's like wishes and dreams are coming true. And I think some people sometimes they lose perspective on that, because they're always on to the next best or the biggest best kind of thing. And me, I'm more kind of like I would rather get the thing that I want and hold on to it for a long time than always kind of pursue having to get the newest and the most innovative or whatever. So hence the reason why I have a 40-year-old drum set set up, never leaves the studio here, and has become basically my go-to kit for kind of everything that I'm doing. The odd time I set up some of my other drum sets just for fun or for gigging or something else. But as far as like what I want to play and the drums that I don't have infinite choice with what I'd want to play. I mean, there are some drum sets and some drums I love that are insane and just so far out of reach. Monetarily speaking, it's just like those can stay in that category of unattainable or whatever, and I'll be satisfied with what I have. So for anyone who doesn't know what these drums are, these are Tama Granstar drums, and Tama. In the 80s, they were starting to kind of become a more renowned company. Billy Cobham and Simon Phillips, Stuart Copeland, these are the very early players of Tama. And then you get into the 80s and they start collecting, some of the younger musicians and Neil Peart was on board with Tama for a while and Lars ends up getting in there. Dave Lombardo, Charlie Benante, some of my heavy metal influences. These guys were all playing Tama drums at one point or another, and so to me that was a sign that these guys are pros and they can choose the best of the best, and a lot of them were choosing to play Tama at the time. Mick Brown from Dawkin and a million other drummers too, and so for me it was always it wasn't really a discussion to figure out what line from Tama that I wanted, because as far as the looks department goes, what really attracted me to these drums were the shark tooth lugs, and once again on Lars's famous white kit. I mean, that's I don't need to show you a picture. It's very easy to find a picture of that for yourself and to see the shark tooth design I'm talking about. I always thought it was a very striking looking lug on the drum, and very cool looking, and it was futuristic in a way and kind of innovative in the same way like the guitars were kind of the same way for a long time, and then Gibson introduced the Explorer, that body shape, and very angular and cutting edge. And I always thought the same kind of thing of the at the end of the day, a drum is round, and the only thing that kind of differentiates it is either the finish or the lug. And to me, I've always kind of liked the hardware in the same way that an old car from the 50s, the hardware would be showcased. The chrome bumpers and all the chrome on an old car would highlight the finish. I thought the same thing of drums. You would get these really striking kind of lugs, and they go along with the finish, or they don't. The finish doesn't distract from the hardware, and the hardware doesn't distract from the finish. They complement each other in that way, and so going towards just an aesthetic thing, the shark tooth lugs were definitely the drums that I wanted to have while I was playing, to be like visually represented of me behind them, and so people could see me play them. And the color was kind of an optional thing. I mean, there was a lot of drums I liked, and I said I've always liked classic finishes and nothing really that flashy. There's been some drum sets through time that were flashy, and Alex Van Halen's had some cool ones, and Michael Sweet, or not Michael Sweet, is it Robert Sweet? Stryper. I can never remember the drummer from Stryper, but I mean, you had these kind of outlandish kits, and they were interesting but kind of comical in a way, and maybe a bit just kind of circusy, if you know what I mean. Like, just I was really attracted to kind of like the serious nature of certain bands, and I always thought if you were serious but you had these outlandish kind of finishes, like it took away from that. So long story short, I was attracted to more your black, white, maybe a red, chrome, just your basic finishes, more or less. Natural wood finishes as well. I've always really liked too. But I ended up with mostly a white drum set, and it was just kind of by a lucky coincidence. Where I live in Canada, for many years, Tama, from what I've read anyways, they had a distribution center that was located in Quebec. And so for a period of time, there was a handful of kits that you could find, like classic Tama kits that would pop up in Ontario, Canada, where I live, and in parts of Quebec, and in and around kind of the Great Lakes area. Sometimes in Ohio and other U.S. states and stuff like that, and they were always kind of within like a small kind of area, like a few hundred miles this way or that way or whatever. And so luckily this was that's what happened. Just scouring. I already had a drum set. I had a drum set that I still have and was using for many years. 1970s Tama Imperial Star kit that I've had since it was the very first drum set I ever bought. I used that for many years, but it was starting to show its age as far as like wear and tear. Hardware was getting really hard to come by for those drums, and things were breaking, and so I was keeping an eye out for something else. It's never really been a thing for me where I felt compelled to buy new. As far as drums goes, the bearing edges are good. It's like once you put new heads on, it's as good as new for the most part. So the other thing too, this is an aside, but patina on drums, it's a controversial subject for people. But I never understood why patina on guitars is highly coveted and patina on drums makes them worthless. But not for cymbals, but for drums, I don't mind a bit of wear and tear, and players' instruments are always good by me as long as functionally they're working and all that kind of stuff. So a few dings and scratches and stuff like that was cool by me, and it just adds to the story. A life well lived includes many scars. So, but yeah, these in particular the white drums that came as a full set. It was basically a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 drums. There was a cheap snare included, but I managed to pick up 2 22-inch by 16 bass drums, a 12 by 11 rack tom, a 13 by 12 rack tom, and a 16 by 16 floor tom, and all from the same era, all still with the original owner. So they all had, with white over the years, it definitely becomes less white and more yellow, and all the drums had kind of aged to the same patina more or less, which they still match, which was cool. And hardware was in great shape, no rust, nothing like that. I got very lucky, and it came with a bunch of non-Tama hardware and stuff I wasn't going to be using. So by the time I paid for the drum set, which is very reasonable, and sold the items I didn't want, I actually ended up making money on the purchase. Not a ton, but enough to justify the cost of gas and the trip and all that kind of stuff. But for me, it wasn't even a question of any of that. As soon as I saw a white Tama Granstar kit pop up for sale, I knew I was right away called the guy and asked him to hold it for me, and picked it up the next day. And so yeah, that was dream come true, honestly, for me. It was the drum set I always kind of wanted, and it was as close to Lars's kind of white kit as I really felt like pursuing at the time. I've toyed with the idea of painting the hardware, but I would see sometimes, and it didn't yield a very good result, and if you do it correctly, it ends up being very expensive. And at the end of the day, I like to keep drums as original as I can. And you might notice with some of the other drums in my kit, they're different colors: gray, black, chrome, pink. Like there's other Granstar drums I have, and oftentimes I've thought about rewrapping them or something. But I'm okay having a jelly bean drum set down here. It doesn't matter to me. It's ultimately at the end of the day, it's kind of the sound I'm after, and the pink drum looks a little strange, but the rest isn't too bad. The blacks and the gray and the chrome and everything kind of intermingles well, and it doesn't stick out too oddly. But you know, these drums are getting harder to come by every year. There's more and more of them that are being, you know, certain drums get cannibalized just for the hardware, you know, to outfit other drum sets. Or, you know, there's plenty of people doing replica kits for Lars with that white drum set these days, or even his kit from Injustice for All. And so yeah, these shark tooth lugs and the hardware is it's getting pulled from a lot of functional drums and put onto other different size drums. And you know, these drums, they are I think they were introduced right after the Superstars or the Art Stars. So we're talking probably 1986. I think originally they were launched as a line called Crest Star, and then that changed into Granstar. There's a weird story about being sued by the toothpaste company and needing to change the name. So I think in 1987 is the first year that we have the Tama Granstar name. And I don't know exactly what year most of these drums come from. The white kit, I was told, was 1988, but the rest are kind of orphans and, you know, purchased on their own, and just of varying years, but they are all the same hardware, the same shell composition, same shell thickness. So for, you know, all rhyme and reason, they're matching drums, and which is perfect for me. So Tama was really renowned in those days for their Superstar line, and as I said earlier, Neil Peart and a few other drummers had been using the Superstars, and then that moves into either Art Star, which was you know, Tama's highest end drum in the mid '80s. And Tama had through the '80s there was a real preference amongst especially the Japanese drum makers. There was a real preference for Burt shells, and I've never been one to kind of really maybe on paper or, you know, through some kind of analyzing like scientific equipment or something like that, maybe like there are apparent differences in wood composition. I'm not talking thickness, I'm just like the actual like molecular structure of drums. There's definitely going to be nuance that's in the different materials, but as far as like quality or like sonics and producing like a good drum sound, I don't think it makes really honestly that much of a difference. The biggest difference I've always kind of thought was that in the 80s, the trend was to do really thick shells. And, you know, if you think of snare drums, it's like, a thicker shell snare drum usually yields a higher pitch. And so it's kind of like a strange relationship that these 80s drums have, because you have like a thicker shell, which is going to raise the pitch of the drum naturally anyhow. But then you're introducing more depth to it, which is kind of not necessarily lowering the the pitch overall of the drum, but it's changing the relationship between the top and the bottom head. And so there was some, I don't know exactly what the engineering is behind it. Honestly, I think power toms were more about kind of the look and the power, quote unquote. You know, I've become accustomed to them. A lot of people don't like them because they obviously have more depth and they sit higher on the kit and they're a little harder to place. But it's just my natural playing position. It's never really been an issue for me, so I don't really have too many issues incorporating them in. I happen to like big diameter drums, so that actually ends up being kind of more of the sticking point for me with placement. You know, like a 12 and a 13, and normally in most modern kits you'd have a 10 or a 12, or some modern kits, I mean, some guys are doing 8, 10 for rack toms. And so yeah, placing big drums in and trying to be compact about it is definitely an oxymoron, but make it happen. So, but yeah, these drums, the white kit, as I said, came to me pretty all in one fell swoop. A bunch of hardware came with it. Some of these, they're in my videos, and you can see them a little bit here, but all the heavy metal guys were famously using the heavy duty cymbal stands, and in the purchase of the white kit, I managed to get a couple of these stands, and which was a very lucky occurrence too. I happened to be getting a lot of these drums at a time when this stuff was not desirable, and people wanted smaller drums and they wanted lighter weight hardware, and you could get this stuff back then for nothing really. And very luckily, I kept an eye out for a lot of this stuff and managed to get some good deals and some good trades on things to get everything I wanted. And so yeah, I'm very fortunate in that way. And just also regionally, just happened to be in a good spot where some of this stuff was popping up. For instance, like this is a factory 15-inch floor tom. I thought when I'd gotten my hands on it originally that it was a rack tom that somebody had converted, but it's straight from the factory, no extra holes. It has the period correct tom legs and the mounts that go along with it. And at the time this was being made, a 15-inch floor tom, it might have been kind of relegated to more of a fusion kind of player, like maybe somebody like a Steve Gadd or somebody like that would have been playing a 15-inch floor tom, but this definitely would have been an odd duck to have for that time. And I have a 15-inch rack tom as well, but that's a beast to put up on the kit. So I've been using the 15-inch floor tom to the left here, and that's a great addition. But the other drums in the kit, just to get out of the way, like typical 16 floor tom. An 18 by 16 floor tom, which was another kind of a lucky find. I had a different 18 by 16 floor tom, and it was a later model of Granstar Custom, and so it had a painted finish and not the wrapped finish that these drums all have. And so I saw this one pop up and sold one and got the other one basically. And so it all worked out. But this was another great find to have. I love, big drums to me are kind of where it's at. And, I'm not the most accurate striker of drums either. So having bigger targets to hit is kind of a better deal for me in the long run. So yeah, 16 and 18 floor toms, and then in a kind of a group purchase that I got, I bought a full set of the Tama Octobons, which I don't have set up usually. It's just kind of a fun thing to have around. But the gong drum was a part of that purchase, and that was something that I was really, really after. Simon Phillips is a big inspiration of mine, and him, and along with Tim Alexander from Primus and David Silveria from Korn. Were all, had gong drums in their setup, and I always thought it was such a cool instrument. And a lot of people look at that drum and think it's just a mounted bass drum, but it's a different beast altogether. I always tell people it's kind of like halfway between a timpani and like maybe a concert bass drum. It has more ring to it. It doesn't have like the kind of more muffled kind of dead tone that a typical rock bass drum would have. It definitely has a lot longer sustain, and it sounds awesome playing it with like mullets and mullets, 1980s mallets. Sounds awesome playing it with mallets and kind of getting that real nice sustain and that real kind of like timpani effect I was talking about. So, but also original, it's also a birch shell in exactly the same specs as what the Granstar drums are, and this was part of another Granstar kit, and I didn't end up getting the whole kit, but this was considered the extras, and so I ended up grabbing the extras, and so that became a part of my set, and I use it quite a bit. It's a great drum to kind of come around at the end of a drum fill and have, or to hit at the same time as a cymbal instead of coming with the bass drum and a cymbal at the same time. Sometimes I'll use the gong drum instead. But yeah, you know, just randomly coming across other drums. I'm always keeping my eyes out for, Tama had some odd sized drums in this period. They made an 11-inch drum, you know, they needed an extra size, I guess, for guys that wanted a wall of toms. So there's an 11-inch drum floating around out there. I have a 10-inch rack tom, a 14-inch rack tom, and a 15-inch rack tom that I don't keep them on the kit normally. Sometimes I swap them in and out, but they're just kind of there they were parts of other purchases, and they're just, the completionist in me was trying to get as many of the sizes as I would find useful in what is my favorite kind of, shell configuration and drum set. And so basically all the way from 10 all the way to an 18-inch floor tom. Luckily, I've gotten all the sizes for that. So, but yeah, they get, to get to the kind of main point of the video finally, it's not as much about the, sonic character and all these kinds of things is the reason why I love playing this drum set. It's a feeling, it's a nostalgia, it's all those things. It's holding on to childhood dreams and all this kind of stuff. And this drum set and these drums and the Granstars in particular are all kind of a very important part of that. When I sit down and play this kit, it's just like a trip down memory lane with a lot of things. And I'm in my 40s at this point now, but sitting at this kit is like a time machine. And it just makes me think of like all the the drummers I watched growing up, and seeing them using these same drums, and emulating my heroes in a sense. And as I said, it's you have these thoughts and wishes and hopes as a kid or a young person, and even though they might not be big, it's like sometimes you can grab onto these things and achieve what you set out to kind of do, or what you hoped to do. And this is a small part of that. And so yeah, at the end of the day, just sitting down and playing this kit just makes me happy. Seeing it down in the studio here set up, sometimes maybe I'm not the only one. Other drummers, you can chime in on this, but I can't help but walk from one area to the other, and every time I'm here, just take a glance over and just realize how lucky I am to have a space to set all this stuff up and a place to play it. For many years I didn't even have a spot where I could set up to play, and so I don't really take anything for granted that much, and I've got some very tolerant neighbors when it comes to playing as well. So I'm lucky to have the space to keep these set up and spread out and use the big kit that I want to use. And it's so for the time being, knock on wood, as long as I can keep them set up. And they said the odd time I might swap them out for a different drum here and there if I'm looking for something different sonically, or just sometimes it's fun to change things up. But for the most part, I think this drum set, for the most part, will be the one you see in the videos moving forward. Someday for fun, I might set up one of the other kits, just a little change of pace. Just to hear them under microphones as well, just to see if there is, any difference really. But tuning aside, it's in the room when I play, I don't really hear, they all sound good to me. And that's just an opinion, more or less. Some people, a good drum sound to somebody is a bad drum sound to somebody else, but they please me, and that's what's the most important thing down here playing. So, but yeah. I get the odd question about the drum set, and I thought maybe I would just do a longer kind of format video and talk about the reasons why I choose to play this drum set and why it's my favorite drum set. All these things that I really enjoy about it and stuff like that. But thank you for questions that everyone's given me over the last few years, and for having an interest in it. And the odd remark I get where it's talking about how cool the Granstar kits are is it's always it always makes me feel good, and it probably makes me think that person may have had the same kind of dreams and hopes and all that kind of stuff that I had. And yeah, it's cool to see an appreciation for these drums. And you wouldn't think of them. It might be weird to think of them as kind of like in classic sense now, because to me, classic drums are still like the Ringo Starr kits, the John Bonham kits from the '70s. But these drums are entering classic territory at this point. And there's the odd drummer I see bringing power toms back, and I don't know if they'll ever come back in full fashion or not, but they look pretty cool. So if you can deal with the tuning on them, then you can be cool. Anyways, cheers and thanks for watching, and hopefully this answered a few bits of information if you were curious. So cheers.